I'm Lior Phillips, host of This Must Be the Gig. We're a weekly podcast that documents everything about the world of live music, speaking with choreographers, costume and set designers, the people who run beloved venues and festivals, and, of course, speaking with musicians about that one gig that changed their lives. Get your peek behind the curtain at consequenceofsound.net, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. As usual, I want to say hello to all of you all who check us out, check this series out throughout the week. There's new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Always appreciate you listening. To the subscribers out there, if you're not already, maybe you'll get inspired. Maybe you'll hit the subscribe button. Whether you've heard the series before and just haven't done it, or this is your first time, go ahead and make the jump. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast from. That includes the big ones: iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, Podchaser, Acast, Stitcher. Anywhere you get yours, just type in Kyle Meredith with. And I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, my guest, Perfume Genius. Going to be talking with Mike about this new record called Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. It's a gorgeous, lush record with a lot going on, a lot of different styles within, and we're going to talk about the players that have helped make that possible. Jim Keltner, Pino Palladino, Matt Chamberlain, all legendary players. He teams back up with Blake Mills to help produce this again. So I want to hear about those relationships. And then we'll back up a bit. There was a performance piece that he was a part of, that Mike was a part of, called The Sun Still Burns Here. It was based on movement and dance. And first, I want to hear exactly what it was. And two, how it informed the record. And then we'll get into some of the themes, too, like concepts of masculinity, not just in the music, but even in the artwork. Some very beautiful images that he's put out so far. And the songs, of course the songs. Describe, the very first single. You'll hear this again in the interview, but I liken it to My Bloody Valentine and Jeff Buckley together. It's just this really heavy thing that sounds great on his voice. And the second single, too, On the Floor, which has got more of a old school rock and roll vibe. I mean, rock and roll, like 1950s, like Motown stuff. So let's jump into this, talking about this record, Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. It's Kyle Meredith with Perfume Genius.
Hi.
My compliments first. Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. What an outstanding record that you've done once again. It's been such a joy, I guess is the right word, to listen to this. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll take it.
I don't want to deflect from you too much, but I did want to ask about the crew that you were working with on this, because am I reading this right? Jim Keltner, Pino Palladino, and Matt Chamberlain?
Yep, that's part of the crew. It's pretty intense list for sure.
Yeah.
It's real to be able to work with those guys.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, if I were to put together a dream team of musicians, I mean, these three would definitely be a part of that. Did you seek them out, and what was the experience like? Like, I think of, when I think of Jim as one of the greatest session drummers of all time, and Matt always brings this really amazing jazzy feel to it. And of course, Pino might be the greatest, bass player at what he does. Like, was that on your mind? Did you need them specifically?
I mean, I'm certainly happy to specifically have them, but I mean, a dream team is a dream team for a reason. Like, it felt like out of my reach, but my producer, Blake Mills, has worked with them before. And, I really definitely credit him with having those connections and having those guys. Pino played on my last record, and so did Matt. And so I had some working relationships with them before. I mean, this record, we wanted it to be live, and we wanted to assemble a band and play as much as we could together and capture the performance in the room instead of kind of layering things after the fact and kind of piecemealing it together. We wanted to have the bulk of all the songs as complete as we could have them with just a recorded moment. And so, I mean, having those guys be the ingredients that cook it all up is intense and made it a lot easier to have that happen pretty instantaneously.
Uh-huh.
So.
Well, you have such interesting song structures. I mean, it doesn't feel like you're afraid of a left turn. Those kind of movements are common in a lot of your songs. And when you're working with these type of professionals, or just anyone, I should really throw that to anyone. It doesn't seem like with a lot of artists, songs are just jamming, and eventually they kind of find their way. I don't get that sense with you. These sort of seem like more planned out, and you're saying, that you wanted them pretty far to a certain degree anyway, but I guess that's what I'm saying. Like when you're talking to other musicians, how much conversation has to go in where you have to point out your exact vision for what a song does?
I make pretty fully fleshed out demos for all my songs at home before I take them to the studio. And I'm not super sacred about keeping anything beyond the map of it, I'm okay with it sounding completely different than the demo as long as the spirit is intact. And so we spend some time listening to the demo and talking about it a little bit. But when you're working with people of that caliber, they can follow you pretty easily, even if you're jumping off a cliff after being on it for just a split second or something. And I also don't have anything to compare it to. Like my songs, I've always kind of written that way, and I've been comfortable just shifting and changing whenever it instinctually feels right. I've listened to music for a long time, and I know that that's happened before, but it's not super common to just have, I don't know, I think maybe some other people would split some of my songs into 3 parts or extend sections and have them be their own thing. But sometimes, most of the time, it feels whole to keep it all there.
Do you feel those changes coming when you write a song? Is it obvious that everything's about to go in a very different direction?
I mean, it's almost like weird little mini chapters. Sometimes it'll just come to an end, but it won't feel done. It'll feel like there's a next chapter, but it's the same story. And sometimes I can feel it blossoming or distilling as I'm writing it. But honestly, I don't really know why.
Yeah.
It's like almost some of it's math and some of it's deliberate, and some of it feels more just like a kind of a channeling spiritual thing. Like I just kind of open to it, and I just don't try to control it too much and let it go wherever it wants.
Well, it's one of my favorite things about what you do. And with this record, I think I know a part of it kind of starts. I mean, a lot of records, we talk about what happens before. And one of the things that kind of leads into this is something called The Sun Still Burns Here. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what exactly that is and how it influenced what happened with this album.
Well, it was essentially like a dance and music collaboration between me and a choreographer named Kate Wallach and her company, the YC. And I mean, from the very beginning conversations that we had, we wanted those things to be together, not next to each other. I didn't want us, like me and the band, to be playing music and the dancers be on the other side of the stage. I wanted to sing, and Al, my partner who played with me this whole time, I wanted him to dance too. And I wanted the dancers to sing if they could sing. I don't know. We wanted this braid of everything together. And so I wrote the music like that, and we formed the dance that way, and she wrote the dance, and with all that in mind, that we're kind of building this new world all together. But I don't know, it changed a lot for me. It shifted a lot about how I think art is made, like what I'm capable of and what my body can do, and it really messed me up in a good way.
It reminds me David Byrne on his most recent set. I mean, he got a lot of accolades for his stage presence, but he's talked a lot about incorporating movement even in the way he writes the song, in the words, in the actual notes, that it's not just a physical thing. It sort of makes its way into that. Is that similar for you as well?
I think so. I mean, I definitely informed this album a lot, because usually my process of writing is super, super isolated and solitary in the beginning. It eventually involves a lot of people, but the core ideas and the core kind of dreams are I build them by myself. But with the dance and even the music, this time was built in a room with other people from the very beginning. All the seeds that we are planting were built together, and they were built physically and in a room, and it was very tangible. I was holding people and being held, and I still felt all that kind of wildness and kind of magic of writing, which used to be something that I only really felt or only kind of had that transcendence when I was alone. And now I'm having it with people and connected to the world and to my body. And that changed a lot for me in my daily life and what I wanted. And even what a lot of these songs are about is kind of trying to channel that and kind of bring all these abstract ideas and feelings and things that are confusing and funnel them and channel them into something physical and moving and real.
What's an interesting juxtaposition, maybe? I don't know if that's the right word for this. We see the artwork, and there's a very masculine thing going on. I think I've read you talking about, sort of deconstructing masculinity. how does what you're talking about right there with movement, with being carried and carrying, how does that fit with the concept of masculinity for you?
I mean, all of those things have always existed in equal measure at the same time for me. I mean, I know presenting, in one direction more than the other is a choice, but it's not at the expense of the other one, in my opinion. I guess I just always just do what I want. And I just feel, it's confusing to me. So much of it is confusing because of how that I'm told to be, pick one or just sort it out, or I don't know. I just want to be covered in dirt, really, essentially. It's what it boils down to. I don't really know why, but that's what I'm doing.
It's beautiful
and
artwork.
I think part of it is this kind of earthly, kind of connected earthly thing. I'm trying to just bring all this stuff that is always swimming around and buzzing around that I'm always trying to process and deal with, and just bring it to the ground and bring it to something I can roll around in.
I do love it. I mean, even just as artwork alone, even without the music, it's such beautiful art that is a part of this. With both images I've seen so far, I want to hit on a couple of the songs too. Describe that first single that we're hearing. To me, it's like My Bloody Valentine meets a Jeff Buckley. I don't know if you've ever heard the Jeff Buckley song "Yard of Blonde Girls." It sort of reminds me a little bit of that. Where did that sound come from? I mean, again, is that something you went for? Because that heavy fuzz, it suits you really, really well.
I thought the last record was going to be a lot more, overtly rock and roll-y or something. I thought it was going to be much more organic and bandy in it, but it went to kind of a wilder, more layered place. And I think we all knew that I wanted to have elements of that in this record, and the songs that I wrote suited it more. But that specific song I wrote as a kind of very plaintive, melancholy, slow ballad, almost gentle and very sad. But when I played the demo, Blake heard that guitar coming out like that, and then keeping both of those ideas intact, keeping the vocal very gentle and soft and still close to the ear, and the guitar heavy and sludgy. I don't know. I feel like it enhanced both things. It lifted up the kind of desperation of the vocal, and it made the guitar even more punishing.
I love it. It's a great introduction too. You mentioned the rock and roll. I mean, you do get that, of course, on the second single with on the Floor. I mean, that's got some 50s rock and roll. It's got some Motown happening there, and it's quite the difference to describe too, right?
Yeah. I mean, it all comes from the same place, and it all came from the same people playing. So I don't know. I'm not super. To me, they don't feel maybe as different people. I don't know. I'm happy to shift.
Yeah.
And just switch. So.
Nothing new for you on the shifting. Again, Mike, it's made for just a really outstanding record with Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. I honestly do love it. Thank you for this music, and thank you for the conversation today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for calling.
All right. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you around. Take care.
Okay. You too. Bye-bye.
My thanks to Mike right there. The new Perfume Genius record is called Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. Thanks to Mike. Thanks to you for checking out this episode, too. Again, if you're not already a subscriber, I really do hope you take the moment to hit that subscribe button to keep up with us. There's new interviews released every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new artists and just, know what's happening in the music world. You can find us all the big places like Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And after that, head to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, and bonus interviews as well. Again, that's WFPK.org. ConsequenceOfSound.net has your music and film news. You can also find me on just about any social media platform at Kyle Meredith. Come say hi and do the likes and follows over there as well. And that does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.
It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org from Louisville Public Media.